If you're a custom track creator, or you work with any sort of creative medium, chances are that you have a fair bit of unfinished creations lying around. It could be a story dropped a few chapters in, a drawing that you weren't happy with, or a song that wasn't sounding so good. Not all ideas are winners, whether it be because we lose motivation or it simply wasn't meant to be, and that's okay. Today, I want to show you all 4 tracks that were never developed enough to see the light of day for several reasons, particularly motivation. These aren't very intricate or special, but I thought it would be fun to talk about it. Without further ado, let's dive right in. This is the most unfinished track of the 4. It was initially created for a custom track jam, themed after Desert if I recall correctly, which took place last year. As the name might imply, the track was meant to be inspired by Slipsand Galaxy from Super Mario Galaxy 2. The layout was loosely inspired by the planets from the first mission, and was meant to try and mess with the elevation to feel like Galaxy's gameplay, with the whole gravity messing and stuff. It also involved entering the actual pyramid and exiting through the sand slide, like in the original game. I will admit that the main purpose was to really just try recreating the skybox from the Galaxy, and it's one of my favorites. As you might tell, I lost motivation to complete the track rather early, as I only went as far as modeling basically the road, and halfway through creating a test version to play in game, before I stopped. I don't seem to have any SCS or track files left over, so the Blender file you're seeing on screen is all that remains of this track. This track was also created for a custom track jam, this one being a Seasons one from the end of 2020. It was meant to take place on a snowy lake that you drove through by using lily pads and bridges that connected a small snow hill. There were also supposed to be toll houses along the first bridge, floating in the lake. I got pretty far into making this track, making a test version with C-tools and everything that doesn't look good at all, but gets the job done, mainly to test the collision and the layout. However, I quickly felt the model wasn't going anywhere special and I dropped the idea. In my opinion, I had a solid idea, however, the execution wasn't going the way I liked it. Mainly that the environment felt uninspired, and with the jam's time constraint looming over, I didn't feel it was possible to bring the idea how I wanted it. However, if the layout does seem familiar, that's because a while later I repurposed the idea and layout, in some way, for a competition called City Secret Santa, where I submitted the layout for someone else to choose it and make it within a week. I simply renamed it to Lilypad Lake, adjusted some things in the layout, removed the winter theming, and eventually City Creator Shield happened to pick the layout and made it a reality. In the end, I really liked the idea of driving around lily pads, so I'm glad that this track managed to get a second life thanks to City Secret Santa. This track here came about 2 years ago, as I had designed a track that took Whomp's Fortress from Super Mario 64 and made it a proper racetrack. An idea that already exists using the original model, but I wanted to adapt a layout into the fortress that actually adjusted itself into Mario Kart. It's a sketch that's been with me for quite a while, and once I had learned of the now cancelled Super Mario Galaxy Custom Tracks project started by Costorian 2 years ago, I thought it would be the perfect chance to bring this idea to life, given that Throwback Galaxy in Mario Galaxy 2 is a thing. I thus used textures from there and had a fair bit model, even going out to halfway of the fortress in Blender, as you can see here. It was meant to be somewhat high poly as well, to try and resemble Super Mario Galaxy 2's model quality, but I'm not that great of a modeler, in all honesty, and details are best spared for the sake of the collision. It even has a test version covering the lower half of the course, where you can see how I was going about adapting the original course. You start roughly like the original, at the bottom on the left, enter the fort, come out at the second floor, and make a turn before the slope with the thwomps. As it happens, I lost motivation to continue when I reached the upper part of the track, and with the project eventually going inactive, I had much less motivation to progress. Personally, I still really like the idea of turning Whomp's Fortress into a track, but it's not in my plans to get to it right now. Saving the most interesting one for last, here is Skyside Cliffs, the one unfinished track in which I put the most effort in. 2 years ago, I started this as a sequel to my first custom track, Cliffside Circuit. I wanted to really take the theming in a way that was fresh and exciting, inspired by favorite custom tracks of mine, such as Quaking Mad Cliffs and Sunset Ridge. I designed a layout that intertwined itself multiple times through the mountain to make the most out of the high variation, with the track starting at the top between the hills, passing by the cliffside, and descending into a cave, which will have mushrooms. After that, you will exit at the front of the cliff, where a mushroom section will bridge to the second cave area, which will hold a ramp, and the bridge heading straight up for the final turn. I wanted the environment to be very lively from all sides, as there were meant to be trees hanging on the side of the rocks, a village before the cave, openings in the cave to see outside, and a wide sprawling mountain environment that you could see from all sides. I went as far as modeling most of the road and walls before I lost motivation, in part because the layout, despite taking roughly a minute per lap, which is really not too bad for a custom track, felt very drawn out. It felt a bit boring in several sections, even with the mushrooms, and I lost confidence that I could make the track as unique as I would have wanted, both in gameplay and in theming. I actually have an SES file, and once again, made with C-Tools, that is pretty playable, as I added the mushrooms and everything. Eventually, I abandoned the model and settled for simply remaking Cliffside Circuit, allowing me to at least execute the visual style I wanted, even if it's admittedly somewhat generic. Now, replaying what's made of the track so far 2 years later for this video, I think it flows somewhat nicely during the lap, but I feel that some parts last too long, like the beginning downhill, while some last too little, like the cave on the mushroom sections. I think I was planning to add enemies in the first beginning downhill, but even then, I don't think that will be enough to save it out of the fact that the track itself just feels a bit boring, you know, there's just not a lot going on in terms of gameplay, despite the fact that it looks kinda cool. I still think that the scenery will look incredible, but it will feel generic to most people because, you know, cliff, mushroom, mountain theming, we've seen a ton of those tracks already, and that includes Cliffside Circuit. Regardless, while it's not exactly the same thing, Flip Out Ridge, which I was recently made and designed for Mario Kart DS, uses a vaguely similar layout for the daytime section, inspired by the beginning and the cave fronts of Skyside Cliffs, not to mention the overall cliff theme. Nonetheless, I remain somewhat fond of the idea, so who knows if in the future it might get a new lease of life, whether it be for Mario Kart Wii or for another game entirely. That does it for my unfinished tracks showcase. It's a bit of a bummer that some ways ideas never truly came to light, but I'm content enough with showing them off in a video. With this, I had cleared most of my modding backlog, if not all of it by now, which feels very nice to do rather than sitting on all these ideas for all eternity. Up next, I will be making a video outlining my current plans with Mario Kart Wii moving forward, alongside having a little conversation about its community and stuff like that. It's going to be a somewhat important one, so if you care about Mario Kart Wii stuff, you might want to look out for that video. It might come out in probably a few weeks, I can't really guarantee when it's going to come out, but that's what's coming next. Like I said, it's going to be a somewhat, little conversation I'm going to be having, so you can know where I'm going to go with this game in the following months. Regardless, thank you so much for watching and see you around.